time for the Ron and Brian Podcast. Get ready to fill your ears with the latest news, politics, current events, and whatever else we feel like talking about this week. And now, your hosts, Ron and Brian.
And good evening, everybody. It is Sunday night. It is 8 o'clock. It is time for episode 223 of the Ron and Brian Podcast, joined, as always, by my friend, Brian. Brian, how the hell are you this fine, cool Sunday evening?
I'm doing great. It's I'll let people inside a little bit. Right before we do this show, Ron and I go over the different topics that we want to hit. This week in particular, I feel very good. I feel very good that the next hour plus of your life is going to be an entertaining one. That makes me excited.
All right, makes sense. I'm glad to hear it, sir.
Ron, how are you doing?
I'm okay. You'll notice, again, by the backdrop here, that I'm still located in the patented Ron and Brian pandemic bunker. 2 weeks ago it was monkeypox. Last week, domestic terrorism. This week, Brian, it's angry Britons. I made some jokes on Twitter after the passing of Queen Elizabeth on the podcast account that apparently were not well received. Some threats have come in, and we have felt, at this point it's safer for me to remain in the bunker. But I think you, being the statesman of the podcast, being the diplomat that you are, I feel I need you to go to London and kind of straighten this whole thing out.
You want me?
I think so. Again, you wear a high neckline, which is very much in fashion in the UK. You've got a way of talking to people. You've got a very calming way with people. I think right now my appearance in London would be a distraction and an unwelcome one. So I feel you need to hop on a plane and get over there as soon as possible.
I guess I can. I guess I can do it for you.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to pull rank. I don't want to throw, 51% at you. But let's just say this isn't one of those things that's a request. Like, I'm not
So
asking.
what you're saying is that a week from today, you want me to be in London, another country, the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, and that's where you want me to do the podcast?
Across the pond, yes. That's exactly
okay.
I'd like.
I can do this. Ron, we are getting some comments that there is a weird sound happening while you're talking.
I don't know. I mean, everything is hooked up like it normally is. Maybe there's some AC running in the background.
No. It only happens when you move. Move around. Don't say anything. Now sit still and talk.
All right. How is this?
Don't move and talk.
Don't move and talk. So like this.
Yeah, I think it's the microphone on your headphone. Is there anything rubbing up against the microphone?
You know what? I wonder. Let me see something here. It's very possible. Hold on. How is that?
That is way better.
Okay. All right. Sorry, there was a little audio setting that I forgot to change. So that's on me. And again, I guess the Britons have me a little bit off my game. I don't want to throw blame at people, but yeah, Britons have me a little bit off my game. Well. Now that things are fixed.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a week from today, I will be in London doing this podcast.
All right, I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. In the meantime, I also appreciate Drink of the Week.
Drink of the Week.
Na zdrowie.
Salud. Drink of the Week. Proszę.
Drink of the week, drink of the week, drink of the week, drink of the week.
Brian, what are you bringing to the podcast for your beverage this evening?
Tonight's 9/11. We are recording this on September 11th, and it is impossible for us not to remember 9/11. One of the worst day in American history, ranks right up there with Pearl Harbor. I'm just a few miles away from Ground Zero, and it reminded me of some of the different areas in New York City that were so hard hit when it happened. So many lives were lost. So I thought of Staten Island because that is a borough that was, heavily affected.
Right.
So our good friends over at Killsborough Brewing, something called a Plain Jane Plum. This is a plum infused sour Weiss beer.
Oh,
Weiss beer.
that sounds interesting.
Weiss beer, Jerry. It is, but look at this. This thing looks like plum juice here.
Very nice.
You can't even see me right now.
That is cloudy. That is almost milky. Is there lactose in there?
I didn't even look because I don't want to know. But it is a bright Berliner style Weiss beer, kettle soured and brewed with Pilsner and white wheat, conditioned on plums, coming in at 4.9 ABV. Watch me as I take this sip. Oh, yeah. It's like an angry kombucha.
There you go. Very nice.
It is good.
All right.
And also, because today is the first Sunday of football season, I took out my special football edition version, Crown Royal football.
Looks good.
So I'll be drinking some Crown Royal in a glass.
Nice.
Ron?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes, sir.
What are you drinking?
So, again, we talked about last week how it was officially the end of Hot Podcaster Summer.
Hot Podcaster Summer.
So we're now back to some of our heavier beers. So I went out to Colorado to Breckenridge Brewery for their vanilla porter, roasted malts with notes of vanilla, clocking in at a very modest 5.4%. Kind of low for a porter, but probably a good thing after last week's debacle with the 9%er I was drinking. But it's got a nice sheen to it, nice head to it. Oh, that's good. Smooth, nice vanilla flavor.
That looks like a root beer. That's the same. That is a bark.
Creamy, delicious. I'm happy with my choice of drinks. Are you happy with your choice of drinks, Brian?
I'm very happy this week.
All right. Well, let's discuss things, Brian, that maybe don't make us so happy. That's right. It's Beef of the Week.
Ron and Brian's Beef of the Week.
Okay, Brian, what's bothering you this week?
Okay, Ron. The biggest complaint I had from the week I just experienced, it's the 200 level at Yankee Stadium.
Ooh.
Yes. Never have I felt more cattled in, like packed sheep, like overstocked fish in a fish supermarket. I've been spoiled. I'm not going to lie. The last time I sat in the 200s at Yankee Stadium, September of 2019. We all know 2020 was the pandemic year. No fans were allowed in the baseball stadium.
Correct.
2021, we did start allowing, and Yankee Stadium was very kind enough not to check seats. As you were approaching a section, they did not have people checking for your ticket, so I was able to. I believe I went to about 8 games last year at the stadium, and not once did I sit in my seats that I had tickets for. I sat in seats in the 100s this season. I've been fortunate. I was able to get some, how do I say this, primo floor seats.
Yes.
For several games. You were able to enjoy that on Old Timers Day.
I was.
So many Yankee greats. This past Friday was Derek Jeter, number 2.
Derek Jeter.
No batting. It was Derek Jeter Hall of Fame celebration night where the entire Bronx celebrated. Our captain, number 2, Derek Jeter, going into the Hall of Fame. Everybody, was there to celebrate. We bought tickets. We were in the 200 level.
We were.
I'd reached out to my contact at Yankee Stadium, and I said, "Listen, Ron and Brian are going to be there. What can you do for us?" My email must have gotten lost somehow.
A disconnect somewhere.
I'm sure it was just crushed through in like the bottleneck of press requests for that game. Anyway, so we sat in section 212, and I'm going to tell you something, Ron. I haven't been that uncomfortable in a sporting event in a long time.
I mean, it was a tight fit. I'll give you that much. There was we even had an extra seat with some extra space, and it was still it was very tight. Full house, packed house, uncomfortable to say the least.
Yes, the person sitting to your left and to your right were half in your seat. Your legs, it felt like I was on a Spirit airline in economy class. This is not what I've grown accustomed to when watching my dear Yankees. So this is my complaint, and I will tell you, for all those people who are hitting me up already with the first world problems, I can't even imagine what the 400 levels like at Yankee Stadium.
Listen, normally I have you sit in my lap at sporting events just for pleasure. This was out of necessity.
Of course. I mean, what I don't understand is why you ripped a circular hole in the seat of my pants.
Like I said, it was for your comfort. I felt like your body temperature seemed a little high, so I wanted to make sure that there was some proper ventilation, because you had the neckline was buttoned all the way up, of course.
All the way, of course.
Long sleeve shirt. I think you were the only person. I think literally, apart from the police officers, the only people wearing long sleeve shirts inside the stadium on an 80-degree night.
Sure. Well, I just want to let you know that the bleeding has stopped.
Good. And that's really what's important.
I checked the tampon earlier when I pulled it out, and it was no longer covered in blood. So
then you really have nothing to complain about.
So then I guess the stitches that the doctors put in, are working. Everything's good. Ron, what's bothering you?
So bothering me, Brian, this week, Facebook Marketplace. As you know, we got a new bed here at the Ron compound, and they apparently, weird thing with the delivery company, they don't take adjustable bases for beds. Like if you have,
what do you mean by adjustable base?
So like we had a Tempur-Pedic bed, so it had the adjustable base where it lifts the feet and the head and whatnot. So they would take the mattress itself, but they would leave the base. So I'm like, well, we were thinking of trying to sell it anyway. It would probably sell easier with both the mattress and the base. We said just leave the whole thing. So I listed on Facebook Marketplace, and there is obviously a lot of scams that people try and do via Facebook Marketplace, trying to get your cell phone number to try and hack your account that way.
Okay.
So of course, I'm getting all these people messaging and being like, "Hey, I'm interested. Is it available? Yes. Where is it located?" We haggle over the price, and they're like, "All right, just send me your cell phone number now." No.
So the scam is that they get your cell phone and then they send you something with a link to
the way it works is they're like, they want to make sure that you're not a scam. So you know what I need to do? I need to text you a number. I need to text you, and then you're going to punch this in on your phone. And then they in essence end up getting control of your phone and your apps and whatnot.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So it's just and then you get the people that are just like, "Oh, can you hold it for 3 weeks?" No. Oh, you want this amount of money? How about I give you 1/10 of that? Would that be acceptable? It's just it's aggravating. And again, first world problems. I'm sure selling on Craigslist is probably more difficult still.
Well, if you did it on Craigslist, there literally would be somebody trying to insert their vibrator inside your rectum while testing out the mattress.
I mean, I'd take a few bucks off for that.
You take it off, or you'd add it on?
Good question. Depends how good they are with it.
Understood.
Brian.
So have you been able to move it?
Not as of yet. I have one more person that we're in negotiations. I just want it out of here, Brian. It's literally in our dining room right now because we had moved it downstairs. And there's nothing in the dining room because we're getting the floors redone. It's a house of chaos right now. It's an absolute house of chaos.
How are the pets handling this
So
upheaval?
the cats are all up on the third floor now, and they are going through separation anxiety. Finn, who is the loud cat that you would hear sometimes during this podcast, typically wakes us up at 4 a.m. Just because he is crying at the door, trying to get out of his location and get to us.
Aww.
But he'll survive. He's tough. He'll survive. They got a few more weeks up there till everything's done.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they'll just have
All
to
right.
deal with it. Brian, very exciting week this week. It was week 1 of the NFL season. It was our first week of NFL picks. We gave you our locks of the week last week. Matt, roll that new bumper. What's that, Matt? God damn it, Matt. All right, one more week, I'm being told. One more week for the bumper.
Can we cut it in post?
I'll see if he has it done in time. I'll see if we can add it afterwards.
Okay,
but
well,
Brian,
first off, Ron, Ron,
right.
Ron, if I may interrupt you,
You may.
I need to congratulate you.
Okay.
You went 2-0 this week, right off the bat. You sat there and looked at week 1. You did not feel challenged. Your 2 picks, you took Miami Dolphins -3 over the Patriots. You said Belichick is done. Dolphins 20-7. Then you looked at the New Jersey Jets and you said, trash, garbage, junk, whatnot. I'm taking the Baltimore Ravens -7. Ravens win 24-9. Ron, you're 2-0. How'd you do it?
You know what? I went with my gut. I felt good about these games, and thankfully they paid off. So my perfect streak continues. But Brian, you were not to be outdone. You looked at Green Bay -1.5 going into Minnesota. You said, you know what? This is a NFL season for vaccinated players, not unvaccinated ones. So you took Minnesota getting 1.5. Minnesota wins the game handily. Again, this was the one I thought was going to trip you up right at the beginning of the season. Colts were favored by 8.5 over Houston. You thought that line was huge. You said, not only should masseuses in Houston rest easy now, but all of the fans in Houston can rest easy. They're a better team. You took Houston plus 8.5. Game ends up a tie, 20-20. Still ends up being a win for you, my friend. So you also started off the NFL season 2-0. So applause for that, sir.
Listen, it's just it's a beautiful thing.
So shall we give our picks for this week? This week's locks of the week.
Sure. I will let you go first.
All right. So I like Kansas City. They were really running up on the road against Arizona earlier. They are at home Thursday night against the LA Chargers. I like them at home with a short week. Kansas City -3 against the Chargers. And I'm taking one out of your playbook this time. Houston on the road at Denver. Big underdog. They're getting 10.5 points against those Denver Broncos. I'm taking Houston plus the points. Brian, who you got?
I watched a lot of the Jet game earlier today. I saw how terrible they are. Browns laying 5.5 next week against the Jets. I say you lay those points. Cleveland Browns going to a 2-0 start for the first time since whenever the last time they did it. Also, the Colts laying 4.5 over the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a disaster this year, as far as my memory serves. Therefore, I say take the Browns and the Colts this week. Lay the points, people. You'll be collecting your cash a week from today.
All right. Remember, bet with your head, not over it. But this is like printing money. Taking the Ron and Brian NFL locks of the week. So, Brian, as you've mentioned earlier, as the background banner of this show will attest, today is 9/11. It is the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 attacks at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon in Shanksville, PA, where almost 3,000 Americans lost their lives. Brian, you wanted to kind of, go over some remembrances of that day in question and how Ron and Brian went through that day.
Ron, I felt 9/11 was really a defining day in our generation. It changed the world. It changed everything about us. We know that what was the number of people that died?
It was, like I said, it was close to 3,000. It was like
Close to
2,900 and
3,000
some.
people died, not including the terrorists that did it, or nearly 3,000. I mean, it was wild, and I felt that it was important for us today to show ourselves as true Americans, to show that this podcast will never forget 9/11. And one of the ways that I personally, and I know, Ron, you were right on board with me when we talked about it earlier this week. You were right on board. We're going to read a list of the dead. Ron, I'm going to take the first 2,400 people. I'm going to let you take a break. You're going to do the last
I don't think we have.
600.
I don't think we were going to do all of the names, Brian. I think
Ron, we love America, so the only thing that we can do here is read the names. So I'm going to start off with Gordon McCannell Amos, who was an investment banker at Sandler O'Neill in the World Trade Center. He was 32. Edelmiro Abad, 54, worked at the World Trade Center as a senior vice president at Fiduciary Trust International.
I'm going to give you a little heads up. I'm going to
now.
let you run with this as long as you want to.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. Marie Rose Abad, 49, from Syosset, New York. She was a senior vice president at K.
This time's gotta stop.
Brian,
Wow,
Ron. I think
I
we
got
said
through 3, and you consider yourself an American?
I think you wanted to talk back on where were you on 9/11, Brian? I'm not accusing you of anything, but where were you?
I was in Hollywood, Florida, in the dark days. I was in Hollywood, Florida, received a phone call from my mother saying, I just want to let you know that your father's all right. And I said to her, that's great. I appreciate that heads up, but I don't know why he wouldn't be all right.
Right.
And she said to me, oh, don't you have the TV on? I said, no, what's going on? She said, oh, the World Trade Center's gone. And I was like, what do you mean it's gone? She goes, the buildings are gone. They have collapsed. And that's a building I worked in. I was in the South Tower. Worked on, I believe, the 22nd floor, may have been 27 or 29, really don't remember. But my father worked literally 3 blocks south of the Trade Center. And he said, I remember after speaking with him, he actually looked out of his window in his office after hearing a woman scream, looked out the window, and he said you could see a torso, just a torso on the street. No arms, no legs, just the torso. He said at that point, he said, everybody should go home. And he walked back to his desk, grabbed his briefcase, and left while other people were just running around trying to figure out what to do. That was his 9/11 story. Mine was that I watched TV like everybody else, feeling absolutely separated from New York, which is so important to me. And I just said, this is an outrage. And that was my 9/11 story. Where you know who had a good 9/11 story, Ron?
I'm afraid to ask who.
Anthony Abate from Melville, New York. He was a bond trader at Cantor Fitzgerald. Also, Vincent Paul Abate, 40. He worked as a bond trader also at Cantor Fitzgerald. Apparently, the Abates were, it was a family business over at Cantor Fitzgerald. Also, Lawrence Christopher Abel, also from Cantor Fitzgerald. Alana Abraham, 30. She was a manufacturing engineer associate at Applied Materials. She was on United Airlines 175. Are you going to stop me, Ron? Or are you going to let me keep going?
Broke out the Brian coughing one to cut you off there.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Did that make you want to move back to New York? Did it make you feel such a disconnect from what was going on in your home city that you needed to get back?
Absolutely, because for the next several weeks, the TV was all just scenes of New York, people in New York looking for their missing loved ones, the different memorials that have been set up at different places throughout the city. I'll never forget that there was a very touching story I remember seeing. It was a family member of a relative of William F. Abrahamson, who was 58 from Cortland Manor. He was a business associate at Marsh McLennan.
I'm not even going to stop you. I thought you wanted to do a serious retrospective, but I should have known.
What are you talking about? This is serious, Ron. I'm trying to remember the people that passed away, and people like Dom. Look at Dom, just putting smiley, laughing faces. It's just Janelle's bored. She's putting her zzz. So offensive, people. This is a day to take seriously. Ron, where were you on 9/11?
I was working at a hotel in Bucks County, Pennsylvania at that point. My boss was a New Yorker, also Queens guy. So we were obviously very, very shocked at seeing the attacks. We turned on the news after the first plane, heard about the second plane, and then it was just really a case of a ton of phone calls, people that were supposed to be coming in to stay at the hotel that obviously were now no longer able to get there due to planes being grounded. A lot of people that had checked out, that were no longer able to get home. Trying to get back into the hotel. So it was a pretty chaotic day, to say the least. And then I remember my boss and we were watching the news in the cafeteria when the first tower fell, and he just turned to me and he's like my life will never be the same again, and they just walked out of the room. And that's one of those moments that I just remember from that day, because he was, yes, I come from New York, but I obviously I don't come from the city of New York. I understand there is a certain amount of pride that comes with someone that grows up in New York City, and you could just tell that the loss of the towers, which he had, he loved, he talked about, we talked later on about how, that was his thing when he would commute from New York City to work in other states. He always knew when he was close to home because you could see the Twin Towers.
Sure, of course.
And he couldn't. He had a hard time grasping the realization that he was never going to see the Twin Towers again, even if he went home.
Ron, are you telling me your boss's 9/11 story, or are you telling me your
I'm telling you, some of my experience. I will tell you a story that
you're telling me the effect that it had on someone else, but I'm not hearing what effect it had on you.
I will. Well, I was very shaken up about it as an American, as a former New Yorker. I will say I haven't told a lot of people this story. One of the pilots of the plane that went into the South Tower, Victor Saraceni, lived. He and his family lived a town over from where I lived at that point. And so that kind of came out in the news later in the day. And I don't know about you, but it was, you watched so much of this on the news, and you literally had no idea what to do with yourself. You had no idea. So, I did the only thing I felt I could do. I got a bouquet of flowers, and I went to the home of this pilot. And there was already a pile of, there was a makeshift, I guess, what would you call it, memorial on the lawn of these people's home. So it was, it was tragic, but it was also you saw people coming together to support Americans who had lost family and friends that day.
By any chance, was this the home of Richard Anthony Aceto, 42, died at the World Trade Center? He was a tax specialist at Marsh & McLennan.
I think it would have been very odd for a tax specialist to be piloting a plane. As I said, this was Captain Victor Saraceni.
Got it. Just making sure, because you could have, it's possible that you got the names mixed up.
Understood. Also, tragedy this week, as we kind of touched on earlier, with the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II at the age of 96. You started seeing the news reports that family members were rushing off to Balmoral Castle. William was headed out there. Harry was headed out there. Not Meghan, though. Not Meghan.
Meghan was told not to show up.
Apparently so.
King Charles, as we should now refer to him,
the third.
King Charles said that she was not welcome, as the family members were grieving, because I guess he did not want any distraction from his ascendancy to the crown,
to the throne. So it was very interesting to see. I think reaction across the internet fell into kind of three different camps. You have people, obviously, many people in the UK, very heartbroken that the Queen had passed after her 70-year reign. So you had people very sad that the Queen was gone. You had people that could not care less, and then you had people that were I think, for lack of a better word, happy with the fact that she was dead. The country of Ireland, for example, I think showed many examples. In fact, we've got one here. This is from a soccer match that night that she had passed away, and a chant going up from the crowd. In case you missed it, it's Lizzie in a box. Hold on. I mean, so you could understand, the colonization part of her reign, the war with Ireland, the number of deaths attributed to the UK during her time there. But again, a very long 70-year reign. She saw 6 popes, 14 U.S. presidents, and a fun fact, Brian, 56 starting quarterbacks for the Cleveland Browns.
Where did you get that statistic from?
I have many random pieces, factoids of information. You should be shocked.
Do you know who did not see 56 Cleveland Browns quarterbacks?
I have a feeling it may be someone from 9/11, but I'm sure you're going to help us and educate us.
I believe I believe you might be thinking that I'm going to mention Heinrich Bernhard Ackerman, 38, passed away at the World Trade Center on 9/11. He worked at Aon Financial.
Good to know. Not to get you off topic, Brian, but you mentioned beforehand that you had a question for me and a little segment that we like to call Ron Answers the Internet. So tee it up if you are prepared.
I've got 10 questions for you.
10? Whoa.
Answer, yes.
Whoa.
And we have not done this bit in a while. Now, we all know our dear friends over at Barstool Sports. They have a running account, Answer the Internet, where celebrities are tasked with some challenging questions. Well, I think there's only one celebrity that needs to answer these questions. And no, people, it is not Paul Acquaviva, 29 at World Trade Center on 9/11. He was from Glen Rock, New Jersey. He worked at Cantor Fitzgerald as the E-Speed Vice President of Corporate Development. No, we're not talking about Paul Acquaviva. We're talking about Ron. Ron's going to answer the internet. Ron,
right.
Are you prepared?
Let's tee it up, my friend. Let's do this.
All right. Ron, would you rather lose the ability to taste food or to feel sex?
I think, at this point in my life, I might as well just lose the ability to feel sex. Because I'm certainly eating a lot more than I'm having sex.
Well, we'll talk. Well, maybe if you get this new bed, it might change everything.
You never know.
Possibly be that since you've got an uncomfortable bed, that therefore Mrs. Ron is less likely to be interested in this.
Very possible. What's the next question?
Question number 2. What's the worst thing you've been kicked out of a bar for? Have you ever been kicked out of a bar?
I was kicked out of a strip club one time. I guess that would count as a bar because of a joke my friend made that the women did not find humorous.
Well, do you remember what the joke was?
I don't remember the exact joke offhand, but he was being kind of like a wise guy, and so they did not appreciate his humor, and so they kicked both of us out.
Wow, interesting.
I have never been kicked out of a bar based on anything I've done. It's a good point. I also did not have $900, which they will tend to. I don't know if they'll kick you out more as much ignore you if you don't have that $900.
Interesting. All right, next question.
Yes.
What would you trade a 3-year-old baby for?
A Derek Jeter autographed jersey.
Ooh. If you had to move it, where would you put the vagina?
If I had to move it,
yes,
I don't even
had to move it from where it's currently located on the female body. Where would you move it?
I guess maybe swap it with the belly button. I don't know. That's a very unusual question.
Okay. What is the craziest thing a male or female has ever done to you?
The craziest thing. Nothing really stands out. I don't have any, nothing crazy. I'm very
Comedian extraordinaire Dave Hill once took a train and then a cab to your home. I think that might go up with that.
There you go. All right, that's fair.
Next question. Would you rather have no music for the rest of your life or have all music sung by Mrs. Ron?
Oh, I'd go with no music. I love
You would-
many things about my wife. Her singing voice, as she would have to admit, is not one of them.
So you would rather have no music for the rest of your life?
Correct.
Okay, very interesting. If you had to go to war, would you choose to go during the Middle Ages, the Revolutionary War, or World War One?
I would probably go World War One, just because, from a medical standpoint, I think you would have the best chance of surviving if you got hurt.
Interesting. Would you rather spend your life in a country music video or a rap music video? Now, keep in mind, if you want, I'm gonna help you out on this one.
Okay.
To me, this was tough, but I found this one really interesting because a rap music video you think is going to be very baller. You think it's just
Right.
going to be, popping bottles of champagne with, bikini-clad women, in a pool at a mansion while your rims are spinning. But the question is, you're Ron, hotel magnate. You're not going to fit in with that crowd.
Right.
That crowd, they're going to look at you and say, like, can we help you? The other possibility is you're in a country music video where there's going to be some line dancing. I don't know how you are at line dancing.
Very bad at it.
Somebody wearing a plaid shirt tucked into a pair of jeans with a cowboy hat and acoustic guitar strumming along. They're going to be singing while kicking their cowboy boots up and down. Like, are you going to fit in there any better?
Right. I think I'd go rap video. I think that would be, if I have to spend the rest of my life, I think I would enjoy that more than being in a country music video the rest of my life.
All right. I would have gone with the same answer. Who's the number one celebrity or athlete that you would want to see come back from the dead?
Come back from the dead, celebrity
Come back
or
from the dead.
athlete? Probably
Yes.
be Prince.
Prince. What would you do with Prince if Prince came back, to hang out with you?
I mean, I would like to see a Prince concert. I would say that's a regret that I never got a chance to see him perform when he was alive.
Interesting. He was probably high on drugs most of the time that you were alive, so probably didn't have much of a shot of seeing a good Prince show. Ron, when you're drunk, is it better to have sex or the ideal drunk meal?
Oh, the ideal drunk meal.
What is your drunk meal of choice?
I mean, a drunk meal, it's either going to be like, it depending on what I'm in the mood for. If I'm in the mood for savory, I'm going like with a burrito with some, rice and beans on the side. If I'm going sweet, I'm going with a Denny's French slam.
What is a Denny's French slam?
All that is the grand slam, but you get French toast instead of pancakes.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I like that.
See what I'm saying?
I like that. Would you rather never be able?
This must be a good one.
Excuse me. No, I had some of that the sour beer and it got caught in my throat.
Hold on, it sounds almost like this. Very similar. Sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize.
You told me that you had deleted that video. And
Sorry,
you were never going to play it again. Would you rather be able to never have buffalo sauce again or only be able to masturbate to pregnant porn?
All right. Hold on. Run that
Would
by
you
me one
rather?
more. All right.
I saved the best two for last. Would you rather never be able to have buffalo sauce again
Okay.
or only be able to masturbate to pregnant porn?
So now, if you eliminate buffalo sauce, are there other hot sauces I can have?
Yes.
Okay. But I do love buffalo sauce. Man, do I love buffalo sauce.
No buffalo sauce. But on the other hand, only pregnant porn. And we could, if you
All right.
want, we can talk pregnant porn in After Dark. I feel like we haven't really promoted our After Dark on Patreon. But
So
we can
quick
talk about
question
pregnant porn.
about the pregnant porn.
Yes.
Do I get an option as to how far into the pregnancy the women are?
Oof. I mean, valid question. I'm going to say that there has to be a significant baby bump visible. Like it
I
can't
mean-
be 6 weeks. We're not talking 6 weeks pregnant porn.
Right.
We're talking like 6, 7 months where, it's not like bursting at the seams.
Right.
The baby's not going to have any dents on the forehead, but you're definitely sure this woman's pregnant.
I mean, I love buffalo sauce too much, so I guess I'm stuck with pregnant porn the rest of my life.
Pregnant porn. Interesting. All right. Last but not least, I'm going to try and get through this with a serious face.
Breathe.
Would you rather get a good hand job from your grandmother or a bad hand job from your grandmother?
I feel like this went one question too long. I mean,
No. This did not go one question too long. You don't want to answer this question.
I mean, I feel the only answer is a bad one because God forbid you enjoy that.
And it's a rough one, but just the idea that I made you have to think about.
Well, if it's a
getting
rough
hand
one,
job
then it's
from
going to
your
be a bad hand job, yes.
Hey.
Hey-o.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Ron Answers the Internet.
That was a good selection of questions. I'm
Thank
not
you.
going to
Thank
lie.
you.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. My personal favorite was the buffalo sauce or pregnant porn. That was my personal favorite in terms of questions.
I understand.
Just the idea of forcing you to have to, pick and choose.
Right. So, Brian, as you mentioned, we were at the Yankees game on Friday night. We've got a video from a ball game where one of the players attempted to give the ball to a child in the stands, and basically someone stepped in front and took it away. We've got a little video here that kind of shows you what happened. Oh, we'll play it one more time. You see the outfielder, I think this was the Texas game, trying to throw it to that girl, and the kid and some grown man sticks his glove in front and takes the ball from the young lady. Internet up in arms about this. What is your take on it?
Okay, my take on this is here. In this instance, he should not have done that.
Okay.
It was very clear that ball was being thrown towards a group of children. At that point, you got to let those kids fight for it. Now, would I like to see a fight to the death by those youngsters? Yes.
Yes.
Where the last child standing gets that baseball? Absolutely. Bloodbath. However, there is a movement that has taken over baseball stadiums, I would say in probably the past 5 years or so, where there seems to be this collective acceptance and expectation that children are supposed to get the foul balls and home run balls that go into the stands.
Right.
Where as an adult, if you end up with a baseball, you are expected to give it to the nearest child around you. Dom, friend of the show, Dom, right here, Big D, as I like to call him. He and I were at a Mets game last year when the center fielder threw a ball into the stands, the section to our right, I believe it was. The ball bounced off this guy's hands, bounced around, bounced down a couple rows, ended up with us. Now, I honestly do not remember whether it was Dom or I who ended up with the baseball.
Right.
But we were surrounded by screams of people around us saying, give it to the kid, give it to the kid, give it to the kid. And we looked around and there were a couple kids with their gloves open and they were trying, and we just threw the ball to one of them.
Right.
Would I have liked to have kept that baseball? Sure.
Probably.
Do I think Dom would have liked to have gone home and been like, hey, this was I got a baseball at the game? Yeah, why is it now no longer acceptable for adults to get baseballs?
Right. And I think you asked me, I think this was a previous what would Ron do? You asked me, because, yeah, I think as Dom said, it was you that ended up with the ball, and I think you did give it to the kid. I mean, I think it's...
I remember I had, yeah.
Here's the thing.
I think
I think it's okay if the crowd wants somebody to give the ball to the kid. But I think it's up to that adult. And if the adult doesn't want to do it, I think it's kind of a dick move to kind of boo. Because, listen, someone like you who's been a baseball fan since you were a kid, that may have been the first time you've ever gotten a foul ball. So why not be able to keep it? But in this instance,
there was this one time in college. I had been drinking a lot where I did have a foul ball.
Well,
I was hanging out at this bar down on Western Avenue. I went into the bathroom. This man followed me while I was washing my hands. He turned around, showed me his foul ball.
But in this instance of the video we just showed, that's kind of a dick move. Also, the fact that this is a professional right fielder who couldn't get the ball directly to the person he was throwing to it, though, I think there's a little bit of blame that goes on the outfielder as well.
No, you can clearly see he threw it directly to where that girl was.
No, watch. She throws it, and look how far to the right she had to go. If he was trying to throw somebody out at home plate, the catcher would have to get out of position. I have to disagree with you on this one, Brian.
I do like the look of shock on that little girl's face in the right-hand corner when she turns around to her mother to be like, can he do that? Because that's literally the look on her face.
Yeah, but apparently the family posted this video on Twitter, and then the Washington Nationals. It wasn't Texas; it was the Nationals A's game. The Nationals did reach out to the family via Twitter DM and said that they were going to be sending the girl a token of their appreciation for being a fan. So the kid will get some swag now. So. Works out pretty well.
Are you telling me that the Washington Nationals slid into that girl's mom's DMs?
That's exactly what I am telling you, my friend.
Spicy.
Brian, you brought this to my attention, and I think it's a moment for everybody to cheer. You are telling me that the pandemic, Brian, is officially over. We've done it, people.
Is over.
We have beaten it. Brian, why is it that you can say the pandemic is over?
Because according to the New York State Governor, Kathy Hochul,
Could be.
She announced earlier this week on Wednesday that she was lifting the requirement on all public transportation that individuals wear masks. So for the MTA, like the subways, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, as well as taxis, Ubers, Lyfts, Revels.
I think you've hit them all.
Masks are no longer required. They are now optional. Hochul said before getting her own Omicron variant booster in Manhattan. The Biden administration lifted the federal public transportation mask mandate in April after it was overruled by a Trump-appointed federal judge, but New York State maintained its own local rule up until this past Wednesday. Hochul said relatively steady COVID-19 rates since the Omicron surge last winter and the availability of a new booster vaccine influenced her decision to end the requirement, because it certainly wasn't the fact that about 60% of all people on New York City subways have already stopped wearing their masks.
Right.
So
no one was enforcing it.
No. The cops weren't wearing masks anymore.
Right.
Here, even Janelle, friend of the show, people have been doing that for over a year.
But I mean, do you think it's a smart move? Because I think if people were wearing masks, people are still getting sick, Brian. There are still staffing issues. I've heard of delis that are more self-service than full service because of a lack of employees. I have heard of places, restaurants not delivering or charging exorbitant delivery fees from a lack of people.
To staff delivery guys.
I feel like this may just skyrocket now in New York City with the change of this. But if you're telling me the pandemic's over, I will roll with it.
Ron, I'm going to say this to you. This is where it's the one thing that you and I have preached for the past 2.5 years of this pandemic is believe the science, listen to the data. What is the data saying? That right now, yes, COVID-19 is still running through the global society. Is it still making people sick? Absolutely. Are people dying? Yes, but not at the rates that were occurring before that necessitated social distancing, that required masks in public, masks in indoors, that required family members to be separated, children to not be able to go to school, restaurants to be unable to be open.
You're expecting me to cut you off at some point?
I really was, and I just couldn't understand why.
There are times I just want to see how long you will go if I don't stop you.
You know, Ron, the saddest thing about COVID-19 when we think about it, and I'm talking about it in the past tense, is that Christian Adams, who was age 37 on...
This time's gotta stop.
There
we go. Brian.
How do you, I'm just shocked that you won't even let me get past number 12. I've given 12 of almost 3,000 names for 9/11. I feel like I need to do a Patreon where I just read the list of the dead from 9/11.
All right, we can work on that. But more importantly, Brian, what are you watching?
Oh, you motherfucker. You motherfucker.
All right, well, you tell me why I'm a motherfucker, and I'll tell you why I'm not. But please, tell me what you're watching, Brian.
Okay. Well, I'm going to use past tense.
Okay.
I watched the first 20 minutes of episode 1 of She-Hulk.
Okay.
I tried my best to give it a shot. I tried my best to even make it through the first episode. And then I found myself on the subway, wearing a mask, by the way. I just found myself like, why am I doing this? There's a podcast on my phone right now that I would much rather be listening to. The Ron and Brian podcast, found wherever you get your podcasts. And I was just like, there's songs that I would rather be listening to. I'd rather be surfing the internet on my phone than watching this crap. It's unwatchable.
Listen, and I can certainly, I certainly get where you're coming from. I obviously, I think, am more of a Marvel fan than you are, and it's fine. I mean, it's innocuous. It's like I think it's like 90s style kitsch type scene. But the thing is,
fluff. It's such fluff.
I said to you when I watched episode 1, I said to you, Brian, you will hate this show. You will hate it.
I did hate it.
If anything, I teed it up and said exactly how you feel, is that you hated this show. And I can certainly see why you would hate it.
So are you basically bragging that you called it?
I may have called it.
You know who didn't call it, Ron?
Who's that?
That would be Donald Leroy Adams from Chatham, New Jersey, who was an E-Speed vice president of sales at Counter Fitzgerald, died at 9/11 at the age of 28.
So speaking of, we were talking about 9/11 and what we're watching. I watched the new documentary on Netflix about the anthrax attacks that happened in the weeks following 9/11.
How is that? I want to watch that.
It's very good. It's a little unusual in that they talk to a lot of the people that were involved in the actual investigation, and people that got sick, and people that worked in the buildings. Mm-hmm. But for the doctor who was one of the main suspects, he's like played by a Hollywood actor, the guy that played Agent Coulson in the Avengers, and he's been in some other stuff. So he plays the... Did you
just make another Marvel reference?
I might have, yes. So he plays that doctor because that doctor is no longer alive. So he plays it, and so his part is scripted based off of police reports and emails and police interviews and things like that. And everybody else is like actually still alive and able to talk about it. So it was very interesting. I think at the end of it, like, there's definitely a group of people that feel they know who committed these attacks and have a very compelling argument. And I think there's just as many people who aren't 100% certain that the person that gets named in the documentary as being the perpetrator of these attacks, may or may not have done it. So there's definitely, it gives you a lot of interesting information, but there's also a lot of questions that you still have at the end of it, and questions that will probably never be answered because the people that could answer them are not with us anymore.
As a expert on biochemical weapons, where does Ron sit with that?
Meaning,
Where
what
do you
exactly?
think? Do you think it was this doctor that they keep talking about?
I mean, I think a lot of the signs, point to him. As far as the ability to use DNA to determine what strain of anthrax it was and things of that nature. But the fact that they have been unable to. So basically, I mean, not to ruin the documentary, they're basically able to say, like, we can say that this strain of anthrax came from this guy's lab, but there were also 12 to 15 other people that had access to it. And what other people are saying, like, they were never able to place him in the areas where these letters were mailed from. There was never security camera footage. There was never a gas station receipt, a parking receipt. Like, I mean, and again, this was 2001. There wasn't the level of security cameras and things that you had in this day and age. But again, this was literally in the weeks following 9/11, when everybody was on high alert for anything unusual. So to think that this guy could have been mailing things out from Princeton, New Jersey, and no one see him, or I don't know, it's very unusual. So I feel like he probably did it, but there's still that question of doubt.
Did they ever say, or did it come up in what his possible motive was? Like,
and
if
that's
it
the other
was
thing
this
too.
guy, why would he have done this?
I mean, the one thing they did say is that he did not like New York City. Which, all right, fine. So he sent, one of them went to NBC Studios. But then why mail him? Why the mailings to Washington, D.C.? Like, again, they're never able to really put together a motive, except for the fact that this guy was kind of weird, kind of eccentric. And that's, I think, and they also talk about another scientist that they suspected at first, and the DOJ kind of drug his name through the mud in public, and he ended up being cleared. He ends up getting a $5.8 million judgment from the government because he sued him for defamation of character. So you have to wonder, is, they screwed up with the first guy. How can you be 100% certain that they were correct with the guy that they looked at afterwards?
Sure. I mean, it's the government. They've been wrong on so many different things.
Right. Also, watch the new episode of 5 Days at Memorial. Series finale, episode 8, comes out this Friday. Definitely one of the best shows available on TV right now.
I'm afraid to watch it because I think it's going to be too depressing.
Yes. I mean, you have to be ready for it to be. It's an emotional roller coaster. Like, it will bring you down. You know what brings me right back up after I watch an episode of 5 Days at Memorial?
The Ron and Brian podcast Patreon called After Dark.
Nope, an episode of She-Hulk, Brian, just puts a smile right back on my face. Which I did watch the next 2 episodes of She-Hulk. Again, I enjoy it, but I like it for what it is. It is senseless, mindless entertainment. It is fan service. They have cameos with Marvel characters each and every week. And I also watched episode 1 of the new season of Cobra Kai.
So did I. What were your thoughts? I'm going to tell you something. I'd like to hear your opinion first.
It's running out of steam.
I feel it ran out of steam. And you know what? I'm going to say this. I don't know if the show has run out of steam or I no longer am interested in it.
Yeah.
In the sense that I feel like I've spent enough time with these characters that I'm not getting anything out of it now.
Like, when you told me it came out and you were like, watch the first episode before the podcast, and I was like I remember the last few seasons, like the moment it came out, I would watch like 3 or 4 episodes, and like we watched the first episode and my wife was like, do you want to watch more? I'm like, no, I'm good for right now.
Yeah. I'm not interested in any of the storylines of the characters, whereas, when season 4 came out, which, this is season 5. First off, I don't know how many seasons they've done. I mean, I'm personally shocked that they've knocked out 4. Like, this is the 5th season.
Yeah.
It feels like it should be 3. But it is, how do I say this? I don't care about the characters. I could care, Johnny LaRussa. No, Johnny LaCroix. There's Danny LaRusso.
Danny LaRusso and Johnny. I forget what Johnny's last name is.
Johnny
Cobra
Johnny
Kai.
Thunders.
Johnny Cobra Kai, I believe is his name. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I think they're I think they were like signed for at least one more season. So I think this is going to at least. So I'm rooting for Terry Silver at this point. I am rooting for the bad guy to win now.
I want to see Danny LaRusso's daughter get truly beat. I feel like she hasn't really. There's something I find very unlikable about her.
Yeah.
But the truth be told, and this is my problem with the show, is that I've reached the point where I find all of the characters unlikable.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
like,
it's the only one who's likable is Danny LaRusso's wife, because she's sick and tired of everybody too. She's done with the karate. She's like,
Sure.
just be a car salesman. Like, you
I want
literally
to drink Mai Tais by the pool.
Right.
Which, no offense, that is some first world fucking problem. No offense, but as soon as she said that, I felt alienated, because her biggest complaint in life is that her husband, the car salesman extraordinaire entrepreneur, is working on his home-based karate dojo instead of sipping drinks by the pool, and that's all she wanted. And it's like, there's people starving. There's literally a war in the Ukraine where innocent civilians are being slaughtered.
Right.
And this woman's, I'm supposed to feel sorry for this woman because she can't drink her Mai Tais by the pool. I'm done with the whole show.
All right. Anything else?
Hold
you're
on.
watching?
Did you watch this week's episode of The Patient?
No, I forgot it was out, so I'll have to go check it out. First two was good. I did catch up. I watched the second episode of whatever that Game of Thrones show is, Fire and Dragons.
They put out episode 3 last week. No.
Okay. I'll catch
that up.
Okay.
And I finished The Rehearsal on HBO Max, starring Nathan Fielder. It gets very weird. The first episode I thought was genius. He gets this guy who wants to tell a friend of his a secret. So what he does is he recreates the environment where he's going to speak with his friend, and they practice how that speech is going to go. They rehearse it.
Of course, yes.
But then it takes this weird nosedive into this other story about a woman that is unsure whether she wants to have a kid. So what he does is he takes this house in the middle of nowhere in Oregon, and he basically recreates the raising of a child from 0 to 18.
Right.
There's all these actors coming in, and then he gets involved in it. It becomes very strange to the point where I stopped believing that it was a genuine story and not something that was scripted.
So you think it's a work, is what you're saying?
It felt like a work.
Okay.
If William Esquire were here, he would call it a work.
Exactly. Let's see, what else do we have here? Brian, have you seen this story coming out of Las Vegas where a public official has been arrested for the murder of a local reporter?
No. Oh, yes, of course I did. That's one of the most fascinating stories that's going on right now.
So apparently there was a local investigative reporter by the name of Jeff German, who apparently had written some I guess not favorable articles about Clark County Public Administrator Robert Tellis, who of course we have a photo of him here. Let me see if we can pull him up. Looking a bit like Lex Luthor, so automatically you think he's a bad guy. So they arrived at his house. He had been interviewed a few times. They had searched his house, and now Tellis has been arrested and charged with the stabbing death of this reporter.
Listen, first off, I mean, he's got a Lex Luthor head, if ever one existed.
Right.
People. This is and I'm not pointing fingers here. Here we go. Allie's pointing fingers. William Esquire would be proud.
You blame it
on Reagan. William Esquire would blame her spelling of Reagan.
Maybe he's blaming it on Brian Regan, the comedian.
But it is the fact that we are that we are electing more and more extreme viewpoints into public office. And here is a politician who could not handle that there was a journalist out there posting negative pieces about him, that he actually felt that it was a smart move to go out and kill that journalist. This is and I'm not saying that it's on the right, because ultimately this man's party affiliation is not important. It is the fact that we have, as a society, we have been pulled to the extremes, and when you have extremists, they have extreme views.
Right. And Tellus is actually a Democrat, so it just shows you can be as crazy on the left as you can be on the right.
His whole, if you look at his Twitter feed, he literally was obsessed with this writer. And if you ask the writer, in the weeks leading up to it, what was going on, he said, "I'm working on a story. This guy's corrupt. I'm working on a story about it. I believe he's corrupt, and I'm putting something together." And this guy shows up. He was dressed up in a very strange getup. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit with a bright hat that
a big wide straw hat.
Yeah, wide straw hat. He was seen walking through the neighborhood of the journalist, and then when he returned home, unrelated, several days later, while the press was outside of his home, he showed up wearing a hazmat suit.
Yeah, I saw that when they were searching his house. He shows up in a hat. I mean, clearly, I think he's probably angling for an insanity defense. Would be my guess. I mean, I don't know.
I feel like there are some cases where you should not be able to get an insanity defense.
Oh, I agree. I feel like this guy is just an asshole. That's what it comes down to.
Absolutely. You know who else is an asshole?
Who?
People who get on carnival rides, Ron.
Oh. Are you not a fan of carnival rides, Brian?
No. I feel that it's carnival rides are for people who just want to cheat death. And sometimes death's got your number.
Well, I mean, these folks barely cheated death. So this is a carnival ride that was at the Phase 8 amusement park over in India, in Punjab's Mohali district. 50 riders on a drop tower, which is it's a carousel. It's supposed to spin around, and then one of those things where it drops people down quickly. This thing, and we'll pull up the video here.
It does drop people down quickly.
It does drop people quickly. You can see it kind of spinning around up there, and then it comes down, but it does not stop. It hits the ground, and you see people. That is a rough landing, to say the least.
Ron, let me ask you a question. Let me interrupt you right there.
Of course.
We go back to that previous question from Ron Answers the Internet. Putting aside the buffalo wing sauce, you can have all the buffalo wing sauce for the rest of your life. Would you rather be limited to watching that video or pregnant porn?
I'd watch this video.
Really? You're not a fan of pregnant porn?
Well, out of the two. So anyway, 16 people injured. Shockingly, no one killed. I mean, you see people, even though they were strapped in, flung out of their seats. Sure. But just surprising that people did not die. Yes, man, that was the slap sound that they made when they hit the ground. So thank you for that, Janelle.
I don't know why JoJo thinks that this is bull. No, it really happened.
Yeah, it happened. It
really did happen.
One more.
She says no.
One more story here tonight, because of course, we have to have a gun violence story. Memphis gunman Ezekiel Kelly, who we have a photo of here, went on a shooting rampage in Memphis, which he live streamed part of the way. He was a convict. He served time for attempted murder. He was supposed to serve, I want to say, 3 years. He got out after 3 months. And then this 19-year-old shot a friend of his, killed him, and then within the next 24 hours went on a rampage, shooting many people, but killing 3 additional. But was arrested alive and taken in, and he will be facing multiple murder charges, as well as many attempted murder charges as well.
So the guy's driving around Memphis on Facebook Live,
right,
mumbling, because I saw some of the video of him talking, on, I believe it was usacrime.com, my new favorite website.
Yes.
usacrime.com, because Hoodsite got shut down. You can't go to hoodsite.com.
Cannot,
anymore.
unfortunately.
Now it is all about usacrime.com. So you saw some video of him talking. He mumbles his words, or I'm going deaf and cannot hear him.
There was a lot of mumbling going on, without a doubt.
Okay, so I'm not alone. But he was just going around shooting people while on Facebook Live. And clearly the fact that he was live streaming what he was doing prevented the police officers from just shooting at him to death. Because normally, you understand, Tennessee police officers, when there's a black man driving around with a gun, they're automatically going to start shooting.
Yes.
But apparently they did not want that to be captured on video, so they decided to arrest him alive. Good job, officers. This man should be executed, in my opinion.
Well,
You know what? That's the fucking shame of it all. And I really mean this. And I know this may be 70 minutes after I started drinking. This man deserved to be shot by police. There are so many people, Breonna Taylor, that should not have been shot by police.
right.
And, people were up in arms, and the police department, got butthurt because they felt that, people weren't supporting them and whatnot. Here's an example where I think all of society would have gotten around and stood behind officers who had shot this man to death. And we would have said, this guy deserves death by cop. They should have shot this guy. We all would have supported them for doing
I think so. Brian, tell people what's going to be happening in about 18 minutes from now.
Okay. So this is what happens, people. Every Sunday at 9:30 New York time, Eastern Standard PM, we're going to have something we like to call After Dark. And what do we do in After Dark? We try to figure out how we can stop talking like this. No, what happens is this, people. You're currently watching a free show. This has cost you nothing. 70 minutes of your time, but time well spent. And what happens is that on a regular basis, there are costs associated with this podcast. Every time you see this scrolling banner that rolls by, Ron and I have to pay 75 cents to the kind people over at StreamYard. So each time so look, that's now 75 cents there. Now it's $1.50. It rolls up.
Oh,
right.
My God.
That was exaggerated. But there's web hosting, there's social media posts, sponsorships. The show costs money. And Ron and I, we pay for it out of our own pocket. But people have reached out over the years and have said, hey, you guys are doing a great show. I appreciate, the entertainment that you provide. How can I help you? And you know what we did? We sat there and said, you know what? We're going to figure out a way that you can help us. And the answer was, we went to Patreon. We created our own page over at Patreon. There are several tiers where you can support the show. As little as $5 a month gets you an audio file of something we call After Dark, which is stories that aren't quite family appropriate, things you wouldn't necessarily, want your mom and dad to hear us talking about. Sexy stories, spicy, salacious stuff. But it's also stuff that YouTube wouldn't really approve of. Facebook would ban us immediately. Twitch would be twitching. So it's usually some pretty good stuff. Once a month, on the last Sunday of every month, we invite our Patreons onto the show with us. We usually do a game called Can You Beat Ron, where we put up $25. And if somebody can, we do a multiple choice quiz style exam. If you could get more correct than Ron does, we make a $25 donation to a charity of your choice. Right now, we've got some very interesting stories. We're going to be doing that show in about 15 minutes. Ron, did I leave anything out?
Well, just if you want to join us, go over to ronandbrianpodcast.com, go into the upper right-hand corner click Become a Patron. You can join at the $5 level. That gets you access to the audio after the fact. But if you join at the $10 level or higher, that gives you access to the live video that'll take place, again, just a short 15 minutes from now. So if not, we still love you tuning into the free broadcast, but we do love our Patreon subscribers a smidge more, just a smidge more. All right, Brian, anything else before we wrap this up? I feel like this has been a fantastic show. I don't want to pat ourselves in the back too much, but I feel like it's been stellar.
There's only one thing. If I could do one thing differently, you know what that would be?
I don't, Brian. What would that be?
That would be if Shannon Lewis Adams could have watched this show. Shannon Lewis Adams passed away at 9/11. She was 25 years old, works as a fixed income accountant at Cantor Fitzgerald, passed away at 25 on 9/11.
All right. Well, sad that she could not join us, but thanks to everybody else who did. We will be back again next week. Brian, anything else before we roll out of here?
Not at all.
All right. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you for joining us on the Ron and Brian podcast. We're live each week on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. You can find prior episodes, links to our social media, and everything else Ron and Brian at ronandbrianpodcast.com. See you again